For our podcast disclaimer, please visit the episode description. Thanks for listening to What the Heck is Happening in HR. We're going to talk about policies today. We're going to talk about discrimination. We're going to talk about harassment. And we're going to talk about how to make the workplace productive. Let's start with policies. You probably have some that aren't written. You have some that are written that aren't followed. You have some where none of them have been trained. No one's been trained on them. None of the policies have had any training around them, whether it is time card or whether it is harassment or it is interviewing. And that's not a judgment. It's just the way life is, because it seems to just keep moving along on what we need to get done, and we forget, or we just don't have the time, or it just doesn't seem to be a priority until you get hit with a lawsuit or an EEOC charge. So I want to talk a bit about specifically harassment and non-discrimination and the policies relating to that. First off, think of your values. Remember, you all in that workplace are aligned to some sort of mission. That's the thing that keeps you together. That's the thread in that quilt of that workplace. But how you make those decisions and how you treat each other are your values. So you want to be sure that you remind each other of those values. They shouldn't be something somebody came up with and made something fancy with, and they don't have any meaning to your workplace. They should just ramble off people's words. So let's just say respect or integrity is, maybe those are two of your values or values like that. But then you start using words in interviews like, he has a lot of runway in front of him compared to that other one. I don't think her hair looks professional. Those are the sorts of words and phrases that can get you in trouble, whether it's ageism, whether it's relating to the Crown Act that might be in your area, whether it's a fact that you haven't defined what it is you need in your workplace. I want you to know your biases. Understand that if somebody went to the same school you did, you're going to have a bias towards them. Just fess up to it. But make sure you don't have it as an assumption that they must be brilliant, because you are. Instead, be able to look at it and say, okay, they have it. I know a little bit more about it. Maybe they have their MBA from the same school, but, I got my MBA from a different school because I just wasn't impressed with it. Again, it's an assumption you're making. Understand it, and don't let it influence you when it comes to making a decision about the job. Instead, talk about it. What is it? What's the explanation around it? And again, relate it back to your values. If it's all about respect and it's all about integrity, you're able to say to the applicant or to your employee, I know you're going to that school. That's my alma mater, and I'm really excited that you're going there, but don't think, you get anything extra points just because we have that in common. I don't want you to think that, but I'm certainly here to help you if you have any questions about the school. So if employees have a concern, who do they speak with? Do they have a way to speak up? Do they have a way to be even anonymous and speak up? Now, it always puzzles me when companies just want to promote people being anonymous in speaking up and not having a way for them just to share the information. If you say that you have an open door policy, but if you want to say something, you have to be anonymous, it makes me wonder if that's a real value of being respectful, wanting to build on feedback, wanting to be collaborative. Maybe not. Maybe it's telling you something about your own work environment. Managers in particular need to be positive about policies that they do have in place. They need to understand what they are, and they need to be able to be positive when they do get feedback that something isn't right, and they need to investigate at once. They don't go, I don't have time to do that till next Tuesday. No. Investigations take number one priority. And the reason is you're sending a signal to the employee that they matter. And also, I can assure you that you always learn more in an investigation. One of the questions I always ask at the end of an investigation is to thank them for the feedback, ask them to keep what they can quiet. I would appreciate that, for them keeping it confidential as we continue the investigations, because we're looking for facts. We're not looking for people to be persuaded or to be able to come up with their answers prior. We don't want any of that. We just want to have a conversation. But then I ask them, is there anything else I need to know since you're here? And usually something always comes up, which sometimes leads to another investigation. Sometimes it's just part of that investigation. So investigations have to happen at once. Then you take the action. You want to be consistent in the action. If you are going to be able to have someone found that they violated a policy, let's just say, and it was a pretty serious policy, what's happening to the leader? Was that leader also written up? Was there a reprimand? Was there additional training? Or was everything taken out on the employee and not the leader? See, the leader is responsible for their employee. It isn't about just talking to them, showing up on time, but it's about them being productive, living the values. And if employees aren't living the values, it's probably because the leaders aren't showing the values. We need to look in the mirror as leaders and say, are we really doing right by our employees? Once you've made that decision of whatever it is through a broken policy, either fix the policy, train to the policy, but document the decision. Record it somewhere where people can understand what happened. And in HR, of course, you don't want it out there to be able to have all that information out there. But people need to understand that if it comes up again, this is the precedent that was set. Because if you end up taking stronger measures with some protected classes of employees, it will be questioned. And you need to be able to say why you did what you did or why you didn't do what you did. So it's really important for you to document it, but also be sure it's there. So if you're not there, the organization has that precedent recorded. So we do hope that your policies are written, they're followed, that you train people on them. If they're not being followed, ask yourself if it's even necessary. Sometimes policies have been written for one person. I had an organization once that wanted a new dress code policy, and I said, let's just call it Molly's policy because you're writing it because of Molly. And they were going on and how what things women couldn't wear, and I said, why is there one paragraph on what men can't wear? And then it really just came down to, well, why don't we just tell them to dress appropriately for the day and for their job? And I went, okay. Because if it's not being followed or you're trying to address a performance issue because of a policy, it's an old phrase, but you're preaching to the choir. The person who should have gotten the message probably never got the message or thought it was for somebody else. Well, what we know isn't for somebody else, but for you and everybody else is what the heck is happening in HR. We hope you'll subscribe. We drop new episodes every Monday.